Hello everyone, we are back at it. Welcome to our June wrap up. This one is going to be interesting to do because for the first time in a long time, I actually ended up vlogging every week in June, and so I've already talked about these books, but I'm still going to talk about them here just in case people haven't seen the vlogs or vlogs are just not your thing and you primarily come to me for your wrap-up. So we're going to go ahead and dive into it. I actually spent a good chunk of time updating my spreadsheet that I have through Adley at Hardback Quarter. Let's just say, why can't I remember her name? I always feel like I get so choked up with her channel name, but we're gonna start with some stats, and then if you didn't know, I break up all of my books by category, meaning that I go through age category, adult materials, those reviews I do specifically once a month for my patrons, and that is pretty much it. And so we're gonna go ahead and dive in. If you see me looking in this direction, it's because I have the spreadsheet pulled up over here. So let's talk about some general statistics. I read 41 books in the month of June. Pages was 8,580, and I do include just pages overall regardless of format. I listened to 135.5 hours of audiobooks. This was a heavy audiobook month. I think that statistically I still read more physically than through audio, but still that number is much higher than it's been in any given month this year. Surprise, surprise, surprise. I usually don't talk about genres, but one of my goals this year was to attempt to branch out a little bit more away from just reading contemporary / realistic fiction. That is a genre that I typically cling to a lot, and I wanted to do a little bit better in diversifying the genres that I was picking up, and this is the month that I did it. So for once, this never truly ever happens. I was neck and neck with fantasy and contemporary / realistic fiction. So fantasy was 36.6%, as was contemporary, because I read 15 books in each one of those categories, which that never happens. I'm going to attempt to keep that up going forward in terms of just exploring other genres, which means that overall I read more genres than contemporary, right? So there's some romance in there, horror, historical, which I've been reading a little bit more horror. I read 3 horror books this month, which typically doesn't happen. So overall, my pie here shows that I definitely read more than just contemporary realistic fiction, which proud of myself for that. Let's dive down a little bit. I'm telling y'all, dive down like I'm actually screen recording this. I'm definitely not. I didn't even talk about what my average rating was. So I had one read this month, and my average rating this month was a 3.6. It was a mixed bag this month. I was a little bit, I think, more critical on some titles, especially in the middle grade, because I'm reading so much now. I think generally how I'm viewing it is not harsher, but there's certain elements now that I know that I'm looking for. Especially, I think middle grade was the one this month where I kind of, and picture books too, I think I was a little bit heavy-handed. Well, I don't say I was heavy-handed. I definitely feel like I was more critical with my picture books this year or this month than I have been, because I don't know, some of the releases that are coming out this year, I'm not impressed with so far. Let's talk a little bit about format. I read 15 books that were audio, 2 ebooks, 23 physical, and 1 that was kind of a blended type of read. So still primarily physical. We're looking at 56.1% of my reading being physical, was 36.6% is audiobook. I am trying to read more physically than I have in the past. I will say that this is the month that I think I read the most from my own own collection, and that has to do with my first read it or unhaul video. I read 5 this month, which this year I'm loving that during the months in this spreadsheet you get to see in comparison to the rest of the year. So this year I've read a total of 19 from my own collection, which I don't think I thought I've read that much from my collection, but I have. From the library, always is going to be the most. I read a lot from the library. We've already had this discussion in my in my read it or unhaul thing, my video. Okay, so in terms of age category, I primarily read children's this month, and a lot of that has to do with the picture books. I read some chunky books this month. It's one of the lowest reading amounts, but it's a decent page count because some of the books I was reading this month were 500, 600 pages, 450 plus, and that was in the adult because I was reading, I believe in the adult I read a handful of like some fantasy dystopian stuff that made it a little bit elevated in the page count there. But I primarily read children's that took up, 43.9%, followed by middle grade, which was 29.3%, followed by adult, which was 14.6%, and young adult was 12.2%. So this is one of my lower young adult months. I also, the publication years this month were all over the place. 15% of the books that I read, 46.9% of the books I read were published in 2025, while another 46.9% were published in 2024. So I stuck between those 2 years. That may have a little bit to do with my reading vlog where I was trying to read some new releases. So that could be attributed to that. But there are quite a few books. I read books from 1990, 2003, 2018, 2012, 2019. So we did do some backlist reading as well this month. In terms of places where the books came from, predominantly everything I read this month came from the United States. I had one book that came from the Netherlands, which it was a translated picture book, I believe. That's why that one ended up coming from the Netherlands. Still, interestingly enough, I have about, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40. I have about 40 books that were published in different countries so far that I've read this year, which is not bad. Now, last thing, my diverse reading this month was not great. I usually aim for about 50%. This month I hit only 29%, which is attributed to one specific thing. A lot of it, I think, is because a lot of the picture books I read this month, which is predominantly in terms of numbers, that's the highest area that I read. A lot of those weren't diverse, and then in the middle grade, I focused on one series, which we're going to talk about, which is not diverse at all. So 29%, I'm hoping to make sure that number changes walking into July. Okay, so that is it for our statistical aspect. I didn't do stats last month because unfortunately, I did not have my spreadsheet done in enough time. I was like, I'm going to have my spreadsheet done this month because we're not going to go 2 months in a row where I'm not providing statistics, because you know what, I love the spreadsheet and it gives me so much insight to what my reading is actually doing. So let's talk a little bit about the picture books. We're going to start in that category. Typically, my picture books either get 3, 4, or 5 stars. There were a couple within the past couple of months that have been getting 2 stars. They just were not good reads. I think I had one this month that was a 2-star read. I did not enjoy it at all, but I just list the picture books. If you're interested in seeing my ratings, definitely check me out on Goodreads, because I catalog all the picture books that I read throughout the year there on that website. So the first picture book I read was Murdaddy, The Outside, The Plant Rescuer, The Thingamajig, Big Sister, Longcoat, Night, A Children's Fable, Through Sand and Salt, A Sunday with Everything in It, Bird is Dead, Chooch Helped, Crocodile Should Never Skip Breakfast, Grilled Cheese, Yes Please, Astronaut Sisters, Greatness, and She Was Love, and the final one is Mango Memories. So those were all the picture books that I ended up reading. I don't know if I have a favorite. I don't know if I gave any of these 5 stars, but I really like Chooch Helped. That was a really great one. That was the Caldecott winner for this year. I really liked Greatness, and I think the plant Rescuer and Mango Memories were also really good. Through Sand and Salt was good too, and so was Night and Children's Fable. So everything was pretty much, I mean, most of them were good. I just didn't have anything that really like blew me away, like 5 stars. You know what I'm saying? Moving on to our children's section. So we are in the process of working our way through the Heidi Heckelbeck series. My daughter and I are reading. We're trying to, depending upon how our schedule goes, we're trying to get through one of these once a week, but there's some weeks where things get a little weird and we don't get our reading done the way we want. Like this week has been impossible and we haven't been getting our reading done the way I would like, but we did end up finishing 2. We finished Heidi Heckelbeck and the Cookie Disaster. This one was really, really cute. We gave both of them 4 stars. The Cookie Disaster, it was a cookie baking competition where Heidi's family has this great chocolate chip cookie recipe, and she is so competitive with her classmates that she wants to change up the recipe, and she uses her magic in a way that she's not supposed to, and the cookies end up turning out like horrible. And it's kind of this lesson of sometimes keeping it simple is the best way to go about things. And then we also ended up reading Heidi Heckelbeck in Disguise, which is a Halloween-esque installment in the series where all the kids are dressing up for Halloween, and Heidi is like upset because her arch nemesis is dressing up as a witch, and Heidi's upset because she is a witch and people often like misinterpret what witches look like, and so she decides to dress up as that student, and things go downhill from there. But really entertaining series. I mean, we do about 2 chapters a night. Each book is about 10 chapters on average, so they're not very long, just a little over 100 pages. Really, really easy, heavily illustrated children's book. So if you have a kid that's probably like 6, 7, 8-ish, Heidi Heckelbeck is a great series for them to check out. Okay, moving on to our middle grade section. The first thing that we have in middle grade is a middle grade graphic novel. This is Speechless. This is one that I ended up reading for a book club that we have at work, and the primary focus of the books that we were supposed to be reading were books that have disability representation in them, and so I picked up Speechless, which I think I had started before and never finished because my whole lapsed, and then I had to wait and it was all types of chaos. But this one specifically focuses on a main character that has selective mutism, and she's very communicative at home, but when she gets into school she doesn't like talking. She has trouble interacting with the other students, and there are students that kind of have grown up with her that know that she does not typically speak when she's with friends, but she is super interested with like in animation. Like her dad got her some animation equipment and she's been like in love with it, and she creates all of these short films that people love. They just don't know that she's the person behind it, and so she has to do the school project and she gets paired up with another kid, and eventually they build a friendship. It's also like part of the narrative is not only her working through what is causing her to not speak at school, but also it's about a friendship that she had when she was younger and they just stopped being friends. They had a big falling out when they were younger. She's never really let it go, and that friend has to come and move into her house because her mom is getting them resettled into a different city. And while she's doing that, because the families have been so close in the past, she goes and she lives with them, and it changes the dynamic of her household, where she feels like her parents love this friend more, or her little sister loves the friend more, and it causes this kind of big explosion of feelings. So there are a couple of different elements going on in this book that I really liked. I love the artwork. I haven't seen too many middle grade. I don't think, actually, to be honest with you, I don't think I've seen any other middle grade graphic novel that features a main character with selective mutism. So I was happy to see that representation within the context of that book, and I ended up giving that 4 stars. I then ended up finishing another graphic novel, which was The Witch's Wings and Other Terrifying Tales. This is a part of the Are You Afraid of the Dark graphic novel series. I have the second one on my coffee table over there, and this is one that came out last year, and I had not realized that it came out last year because I saw more promotion for the second one, which is by Roseanne A. Brown. So that was interesting to me, but this one was interesting. It is episodic. It's kind of hard to explain because unless you've seen Are You Afraid of the Dark, it's one of those things where you have a story that has a story in it. And so we're following a main character who comes upon these kids in the woods who are kind of like this scary storytelling type of group where they meet, they share stories, and in order to get admission into that group, you have to tell 3 scary stories, and they vote to decide whether you become a part of the group or not. So our main character tells these 3 different spooky tales, and of course there's always these feelings of like, is this like fake or is this real? Is it spilling over? I never have the words to describe these because you kind of had to grow up in that era of Are You Afraid of the Dark and understand like how they formatted the episodes. It's kind of the same thing in how they formatted this graphic novel. I really like the art style. I like the different stories. I like that we're getting some diverse horror in these graphic novels, because typically I think that a lot of these stories were definitely white centric. And by inviting different authors to be a part of these conversations, they get to pull in some cultural references that I think maybe we wouldn't have necessarily gotten in the past. But I enjoyed it, and I ended up giving that one 4 stars. After that, I ended up listening to Once for Yes. Now, I wanted to pick up the author's first book that came out last year, which was Olivetti. I'm probably butchering that, but it is a book that is told from the perspective of a typewriter, and I just never got to it. But I was like, okay, well, my hold for Once for Yes came in, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and read it, and I'll go back and I'll read the book from last year. Once for Yes is fascinating in the sense that it is multiple kind of plot lines woven into one. Plot lines in the sense that we have different struggles happening. So we have a family that lives in this apartment building, and there has been a death in the family. And so from the main character's perspective, we are watching her kind of deal with her grief. Not even kind of deal, she's dealing heavily with the grief. There were 3 kids, and she was the baby. And this is kind of something that I saw in a book that I read last month, 13 Ways to Say Goodbye, where we have a younger sibling whose older sibling has passed, and now that younger sibling is aging past the point that sibling was present, right? So let's say the sibling passed when the main character, I'm making this up by the way, the sibling passed when the main character was 10, right? And the sibling that passed was 12, and now we see this main character turning 12, or is 12, and is about to turn 13, and it's this weird feeling of, am I the little sister because now I'm older than what you will ever be. And I think that that is such a complex theme to tackle, and it's gut-wrenching in a lot of ways to think about a child that has to go through the grieving process of not only losing a sibling, but being a younger sibling and thinking that now I will be older than you because you'll never get to be this age. And does that mean I'm still the younger sibling? Like, what does that mean for me in terms of how we view this concept of older and younger siblings when death occurs? So she is processing that a lot, and it's hard for her. She can't let go, which rightfully so, whereas her older sister is processing it a little differently, where she's trying to move on with her life, and that brings conflict between the two of them. At the same time, we're getting pieces and parts of this book from the perspective of the actual apartment building. So it's weird because it's contemporary, but there's some fantastical elements because the apartment building is telling you stories about this family as well as other families in the building. And then eventually through the course of the novel, you get to see the interconnectedness of everybody in the building while they are trying to stop their building from being knocked down and more expensive buildings being put into place. So it does tackle some themes of gentrification. It felt like there was a lot going on in this, right? I think that if we would have stuck to the theme of grief and discussing what it would have been like for that main character to have to continuously process that grief, I think I would have appreciated the novel more. But throwing in the other characters within the apartment building, not really spending enough time getting to know them, trying to build in this theme of interconnectedness while also addressing some of the issues that come with gentrification and how it impacts the community. I think it was almost like it was too much going on at one time, and then the pacing of it was off as well. Like, it took me a while to really get into the meat of the book and really start to appreciate it and enjoy it, and that could just be a writing style conflict that I have with this author. Now, it does make me kind of hesitant to check out their previous work, not to say that I won't, but I'm not rushing to do so. But I did end up giving that one 3 stars. Now, I do have another series on my list, but I'm going to save that for the very end of this category. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the next book that I have, which is Find Her. This one is a middle grade novel, well, clearly it's middle grade because it's in the middle grade section, but it is a indigenous book that came out last year. I had been meaning to get to it, and I didn't get to it last year. I finally was able to get to it this year. It did take me a while to get through this one because it is a slow start. We're following a main character who is living with her grandmother. Her father is kind of, he's not completely absent, but once again, another theme that I'm starting to notice in middle grade is that we are seeing character development in parents who are dealing with grief and how it impacts their relationship with their kid. So our main character's mother is missing, so this has a lot to do with missing and murdered indigenous women. And at the beginning of this novel, her mother is missing. They can't find her. The main character is very interested in the case. Of course, she's young. She shouldn't be involved in it, but I mean, it's her mama. You can't begrudge her wanting to find out what exactly happened to her mother. Her father works for the police, and it's hard on him. You can tell just in his interactions, it is hard on him with his wife missing, and not really being able to have any answers as to what's been happening, and no kind of leads on the case whatsoever. And the grandmother does play a big role in building a relationship or having that solid parental-esque type of role with our main character. But what's interesting is she also has this unique relationship with animals, where she's been able to find animals that have gone missing or like kind of sense when there's something wrong. And I think that is an interesting parallel between how her mother has gone missing, and how this kind of, it doesn't necessarily fill a void completely, but her being able to find and help out these missing animals, endangered animals, gives her this feeling of gratification of some sort, right? Like she's able to do some good. But this takes a very dark turn that was unexpected, and I think that it does have a lot to do with the theme itself, but also I think if you are sensitive to the treatment of animals, this may not be the book for you, because I don't think I was anticipating that at all. But it is a part of the story itself. But I think that it is a great parallel for what we talk about when we are discussing missing and murdered Indigenous women. Like, there is a great parallel between the two, right? And there were some reveals and discoveries in reference to a friend's sibling that was completely and totally unexpected, and it shocked me. And it was, I mean, the novel itself, it was gut-wrenching. This one was a lot more difficult to process and read than what I anticipated, and I think that was very much so intentional, right? It's still written in a way that I think is very much well done for the intended audience, but I do think that content warnings, like if you have a kid that's going to pick this up and they're sensitive to the harming of animals, sensitive to topics like missing and murdered Indigenous women, I think that this is the novel in which you want to have a conversation dealing with these topics, because I don't think that these are things that you should hide from these age groups, but you have to know the child that you are dealing with and how to best approach the topic. But I ended up giving it 4 stars. I really did enjoy it. So the next 2 I'm not going to talk about in detail, because these were very heavily covered in a vlog. I think the ones that I'm talking about, I have talked about them in vlogs, but not in as great as of detail. But the next 2 that I ended up reading were for the Newbery project that I did. The year was 1990. That was the year that I selected to do last month. So I'm going to link that video in the card symbol above so that you can check it out. But I will say I left Maniac McGee unrated, and I gave The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle 3 stars. I have a lot to say about each one of those books, so make sure you check out that video. Okay, so next in our middle grade category, we have a horror, which is Ghost of Butterfly Bay. I could never get that title right, always mess it up. This was an unexpected book for me. I did end up giving it 4 stars. I was very shocked at how much I enjoyed this book. So it follows a main character that is a ghost, and at the beginning of the book, she's doing some type of like storytelling with her brother, who's also a ghost, and she lets kind of the reader know that there is not a ghost that's haunting her, but there's some interesting relations that she has with another terrifying entity that she's had dreams about. So we don't really know why they've become ghosts at the beginning of the book. We do know that she does haunt this specific area, and that there are rules to the haunting, and she clearly communicates what those rules are. But then a close friend that's also a ghost and her brother end up go missing, and she encounters this terrifying entity that has these expectations of her in order to get those 2 individuals released back into her care, right? It's interesting because this has some almost like Marvel-esque. It's hard for me to explain without spoiling it, but there is a specific element that is both Marvel and DC that is introduced in this that I was like, whoa, like that's not what I was thinking this was going to be. This is not where I thought that was going to go. And the entity, as you start to figure out what or who it is, it comes very full circle. It's a very beautiful moment. It's a very unexpected moment. I was not anticipating that being what it was. Once again, I think we have a middle grade author that successfully captures grief, but in a way that you would never see come in a million years. So I really appreciated that one, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. This is an author who wrote another middle grade horror last year. It was their debut, and I'm interested in checking that one out now. Okay, so now for the big series that I finished in our middle grade category. It's wild. It is absolute. I don't even think I can pick all these up at one time while I'm holding this microphone at the same time. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, so in the month of June, I rediscovered Warriors. Okay, I technically finished book 6 after June, but it's fine. It's fine. We're still going to include it in here, and I will talk a little bit about it again in my July wrap up. But for my read it or unhaul it project, I was like, I want to stick with fantasy, right? And then I was like, I was reading Blood at the Root, and I was like, yeah, but at the same time, I kind of want to pick up a middle grade fantasy, and like I'd been craving reading Warriors. So I reread Into the Wild and was like, okay, yeah, this is it, 4 stars. I can't really tell you, that's the whole thing about the series though, is that I can't really tell you anything about it. It's so hard to talk about the series without spoiling it. I can give you a pretty, like, an overview, okay? The series itself follows a cat that is known as a kitty pet, and kitty pets are cats that are owned by humans by the 2 legs is what they call them. And our main character, which I need to figure out how I should address him as a character, because naming conventions do mean things in this book. He starts off as Rusty. That's what happens, right? And he decides that he's going to leave his 2-leg home, and he's going to venture into the woods, and he's going to become a part of this clan. Now, there are 4 specific clans for right now, because so much of this stuff changes as you go through the series. You have Thunder Clan, Shadow Clan, Wind Clan, and River Clan, and they all live in this specific area where they have their own territories. You're not supposed to invade other territories. And so when he joins this group, he becomes Firepaw. He becomes Firepaw, and he's a ginger cat. He becomes Firepaw, and he goes through this training, as do all like younger cats. They go through this process of being apprentices so that they can become true warrior cats. And he goes through this process, and he learns about the dynamic of the clans, and he builds these relationships with all these different cats. And this series is insane. Okay, if you, even as an adult, all right, I see why kids love these books, really genuinely. I get it, because as an adult, I'm kind of like, this is wild. The political intrigue in this is it's off the charts, because when Firepaw, which it feels very weird for me to refer to him as Firepaw, I'm going to tell you that right now, because his name changes 2 more times by the time you get to the end of the series, and there's reasons why his name changes 2 times. It has to do with the different processes that the cats go through. And when he first joins Thunder Clan, already we have an issue with a cat that wasn't a deputy. So you have a leader, and then you have a deputy, and so like your second in command. He wasn't originally the deputy, but he becomes the deputy through some really like screwed up things. And like, when I tell you Firepaw clocked it, God, I hate referring to him as Firepaw. When I tell you he clocked it, he clocked this man right off the jump. I mean, just clocked him like, I'm not really vibing with you. Like, there's something that's not right about you. So it's so interesting because I think in reading this book, I was like, oh, he's such a problem. And then like, he is the least of my concerns by the time I got to like book 5 and 6. I do think that Into the Wild is very much so an introductory book where you're getting to know all of the cats, the clans. You're starting to learn kind of their personalities, what they're known for, kind of the political dynamics between each clan, like who partners with who, like who has alliances, who does everybody genuinely not like. Shadow Clan. But is a lot. And so this one for me was a reread. I'm glad I reread it because there were a couple elements that I had forgotten since the last time I read it, but I gave it 4 stars. And then after that, I picked up Fire and Ice. This one also was a 4-star read for me. Things definitely pick up with this book. These books are written in a way that they end like an episode of a TV show. They don't end in a way where you're like, oh, okay, I'm fine, I'm good, I don't need to know what happens next. No, they end in a way that you need to have every book on hand if you're going to at least jump into this first arc. So this is the first arc of the series. This is where you start, because I've gotten a couple of questions from people, because I've been sharing this on Instagram. I've been sharing these books literally everywhere. I've been sharing these books every freaking where. And one of the common questions I get is like, where do I start? Because there's like over 100 books that are in the series, and that's including like graphic novels, novellas, super editions, etc. I have gotten those questions. Start here. This is where you start. This is the first arc. It's not chronologically first, but this is where you should start. Do not start with Dawn of the Clans. That chronologically is the first series, but do not start there because nothing will make sense if you start with Dawn of the Clans. Start with the Prophecies Begin. Books 1 and 2 are definitely setup books where it's laying the groundwork for everything, right? Which is why I think book 1 and 2 were the lowest rated. I mean, and they're 4 stars. When I say lowest rated, they're 4 stars. They are fantastic. But I'm telling you, by the time you get into book 3, which is Forest of Secrets, Yellowfang showed out in this. That's all I'm gonna say. Yellowfang, I can't even really tell you much about Yellowfang. Like, that's the only thing about the series, is that it's hard to talk about it without spoiling specific elements of it. This is where ish got real. Okay, this is where I was like jaw drop, like, oh, excuse me. 5 stars, right? 5 stars. Then we get into Rising Storm, and I was like, there's no way we can't up the ante anymore in the series. Nope. I thought that Forest of Secrets was intense. Rising Storm said, hold my drink, watch me show out. 5 stars. Then I was like, nope, we can't get any more intense than that. Then I picked up A Dangerous Path. Book 5. 5 stars. When I tell you confusion, this series moves so fast and so many things happen. And I will tell you, this is like Game of Thrones. Don't you dare get attached to any characters. If you decide to pick this book, any of these books up, this series, if you decide to start with The Prophecies Begin, this entire first arc, because you ain't just gonna be able to read just one book. If you decide to pick up The Prophecies Begin, do not get attached to anybody in everybody's fair game. Do not, because even my villain, I was like, oh shoot. It was not the major problem. The villain is the villain, but maybe not really the villain that we thought. Oh. And then technically, I'm not counting this one because I did finish this literally as we crept into July, and that is the 6th and final book, The Darkest Hour. So I did end up finishing this entire series. The Warriors are easily becoming some of my favorite books of all time. I definitely in this month already went and got, if you could see right here, this is the first book in the second arc. However, I didn't even realize that you needed to read some of the super editions as well. So guess what your girl is doing? I'm also reading some of the super editions, and yeah, a time is being had. So definitely one of my favorite series, my favorite reads of the month, hands down. I will not shut up about this series, and when I can't stop talking about a series, that's how you know I absolutely love it. Let's go ahead and jump into our YA section. So we have 5 young adult books here. The first one we're starting with is Better Than Revenge. This is Casey West's latest release. I think this one came out December of 2024. I gave this one 3 stars. It was okay. We're following a main character who really loves podcasting, has come up with all these ideas and wants to try out for the school's podcast. Her boyfriend's really good at football, and then come to find out, he also tries out for the podcast and gets her spot that she thought she was going to get. And so what I did like about this book is that it shows what happens when anger consumes you, and it looks at betrayal in a very different way, right? I think when people think betrayal in relationships, it often is aligned with infidelity, but we got to see betrayal happen in a different way, which I think is good. When teens pick up books like this, for me, I love that it informs this idea that relationship dynamics are a lot more complicated and not as black and white sometimes as media can make it seem, right? That the only type of betrayal that you could encounter in a relationship is going to be in relationship to infidelity. No, someone can betray you in a relationship by kind of like encroaching on a dream and a passion that you had and taking that from you. Like, that hurts. It's hurtful. And so she wants to be revengeful and try out to get his spot as a kicker on the football team. And she pairs up with a guy that he did not get along with, and he helps train her, and it kind of unfolds from there. I wasn't necessarily blown away by this one. It was just your kind of standard young adult contemporary romance. I think that specific element is what I enjoyed the most, but outside of that, I was kind of like, it was all right. A lot of Swiftie, references. I don't have inherently like a problem with Taylor Swift, but I think that when you start to put so much into it, it becomes a lot. So 3 stars. I follow that up with Audrey and Bash Are Just Friends. This was a 5-star read for me. I talked about this one heavily in one of my vlogs. I think it was maybe the spinner wheel vlog I did. Who knows? Now I get confused on what vlog is what. Gave this one 5 stars. Loved it. Tia Williams, for me, has definitely grown on me since reading 7 Days in June. People love 7 Days in June, and I was not a huge fan of that book. I gave it 3 stars. But ironically, this book is a young adult book, and I hope people make sure that they get this right? This is written for a teen audience. Audrey and Bash Are Just Friends is written for a teen audience because it follows the daughter of our main character from 7 Days in June. You don't have to read 7 Days in June. I think that Tia did that very strategically because 7 Days in June, in my opinion, is not necessarily a good recommendation for a teen audience, right? This, you don't have to have any context of what happened in 7 Days in June, and quite frankly, I'm happy about that because one, I don't remember a lot from that book, and 2, I was not going to reread it because of how much I had such a strong reaction to that book. This one is independent of it. You do follow Audrey, who what does she call it? Therapizes all of her classmates. She has a very interesting relationship with her mother and her stepdad, who we meet in 7 Days in June originally. Her and her mom are having this conflict. They're having a lot of conflict, and it's one of the situations where it's like, as a mom, I can see it from both ends, right? That everyone's feelings are valid, but how they go about their communication is very interesting, and it's hard on them because they have had such a strong relationship, but their relationship is somewhat deteriorating. And so she's trying to get into school, and she's trying to complete this task list of sorts to make her a more what's the word I'm looking for? I guess to make her a candidate that they would be more interested in having at their school, right? Along the way, though, she has Bash kind of helping her out, and Bash has his own issues that he's dealing with, and so they have their separate familial issues that they're dealing with, but then they are learning more about each other. This is a very, very cute teen romance. I loved it. Monet and I were talking about this, and that Joya Goffney has always been our go-to, especially when we're talking about like Black romance and young adult, specifically written for a teen audience. Joya Goffney she's like great to go to, but it's nice that Tia Williams has also kind of stepped into this and has also created this space where Black teens can see themselves in love stories. Elise Bryan is also another one too that does very well with Black romance for teens. But 5 stars. It was just really, really good, y'all. I really, really enjoyed that book. After that, I ended up reading Out of Air, which is a young adult horror. I've been dipping my toes into some more horror, y'all, and Out of Air was a beast of a book. I don't think I have read a young adult horror book that has given me such like a physical reaction to it. We're focusing on a group of teens. They're friends. They love going on dives together. And something goes wrong where one of the characters is about to run out of oxygen in their tank, right? That scene alone, I don't think I was hyperventilating, but I literally felt like I couldn't read. I couldn't breathe. And that says a lot about Rachel Reese's writing. If you can create that sort of physical reaction just from me reading your book. So there was already that element where I was like, oh gosh, that's tough. They end up discovering this pocket, this cave in the ocean where there are like these underwater caves where they do have pockets of air in which you can breathe and stuff like that. And so they do end up in this cave. What they don't know is that this cave, there's something wrong with it. And there's something that's wrong with this cave ends up creating something wrong with them physically. I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now 2 things. If you are going into this book expecting some like huge like pirate heist, walk away from it, because it does have some stolen treasure, pirate heist type of elements, but that's not the focus of the book, right? If you cannot deal with body horror, do not pick this book up, because there are some body horror elements in this one that literally made me want to scratch my skin off of my body. Okay. I don't think I've read much body horror, and even thinking about this book just makes my skin crawl. But it was very well done. I think that there was some interesting commentary about the impact of wealth disparity in communities and how it impacts that community and how they interact with each other, and then how wealth disparity impacts youth and how they interact with each other, right? And what decisions people will do in order to make things happen, right? This was not this was not what I anticipated at all. I enjoyed it. Clearly Rachel Reese has done her research. I gave it 4 stars. I liked it personally. Like it was a good time. It was a good time. After that, I finished Always Be My BB, which of course is a play on Always Be My Baby. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It is a young adult contemporary romance where we're following a main character by the name of BB who is on punishment because she was going out with some boys and she wasn't supposed to, and she got caught, and now she's supposed to be staying working with her family's chicken restaurant, which part of the chicken restaurant element is because of the fact that, how did this work out? Her dad established this chain in the United States. They're in Paterson, New Jersey, but he's established this chain that has made them pretty wealthy, and she's supposed to be there all summer, but then her sister comes back, find out that her sister is going to get married, and so they want to go back to Bangladesh in order to have a traditional wedding. I think I love this one because of the Bangladeshi cultural elements and traditions that we don't often see in young adults. I think we're starting to see a lot more South Asian representation in young adult. I mean, in all of Kidlit, but I love learning about various South Asian countries because I feel like people often clump them all together. And then when you think South Asian, the first thing that people think about is India. And so there, you know what I'm saying? Like, so there's that. Like, one of the middle grade books that I read this year had Sri Lankan representation, and I don't think I'd ever read a middle grade book with Sri Lankan representation in it. So loving seeing all of these different South Asian representation in our Kidlit sphere. I love learning about all the different components that go into a wedding, like the traditions, the customs. It was just fascinating, right? Well, while she's there, BB is battling, I don't want to say like she's battling, but it's one of those narratives where it's like tradition versus stepping into, you know, a lifestyle or customs that are not synonymous with what is typically expected of you in your culture. And so we see that at play. We see her wanting to find a romance of her own. I think my biggest thing about this book is that it had too many elements going on, and I talk about that specifically in a vlog where we have like her being able to date for the first time. There is, I forget what it's called, but like she is escorted, or chaperone is the word. She's chaperoned during these dates. These are young men that have submitted like their profiles, things about their family, things about themselves, and they decide like who she's going to date. There's that element. There's an element with her grandmother, and then her and her sister's fiance's brother try to sabotage the relationship between the two of them because the two families clash so much. So there was too many plot points, and I felt like some were better developed than others, but overall it was a solid book, and I'm really interested in picking up more by this author. So it was good. This was an arc that I received from Simon Teen, so I wanted to read that and work through that. The last book that I ended up finishing in the young adult category was Serpent and Dove. And Serpent and Dove is one of those teen books that pushes itself into upper young adult, right? Most of these other ones I think are great for like 14, 15, like 14 and up. Serpent and Dove for me definitely reads 16 and up, right? It straddles a lot in some of its elements, but I did like it. I did the spinner wheel, and I had to read books from my library TBR card, and Serpent and Dove came up, and it's over 500 pages, and I finished the book in 48 hours because I enjoyed it that much. It is a fantasy book, fantasy slash paranormal fantasy-esque type of situation. We're following a main character who is a witch, but she's been able to hide that she's a witch, and so we're living in a community which is it's French, and I don't know if it's really like France itself, but you know, like a fantasy version of France where they hunt witches. The church has a select group of men who are destined to fight these witches, and they have these specific powers that allow them to do so, like this protection against the witches. And the witches have their own reasoning for wanting to push back against the church, and we're following a main character who's tried to run away from her coven, and you slowly learn why she does not want to have anything to do with her coven, and she gets caught, and she ends up in a marriage of convenience of sorts with one of the men that is destined to get rid of witches. And so she has to hide who she is while also trying to navigate using his protection for her battle against her own coven. Like, it is a lot more complex than what I think I anticipated, right? And it is pretty dark, and there are some elements where I was like, oh my gosh, like some shocking twists and turns that I was not expecting. Clearly the writing is super accessible. I mean, for me to read a 500-page book in 2 days means that the writing has to be like super quick, and it does. It's very indicative of a teen book. I think the content is where I'm like, this is a little older than what I anticipated, but I did enjoy it. It's kind of one of those things where, I mean, this one came out in like 2019. I never jumped on the train when it originally came out. People loved this series. I did hear that unfortunately the series does go downhill after Serpent and Dove. There is a spin-off series that has been slowly coming out that I do want to pick up, but yeah, I mean, it shocked me. It was a shocking read for me. And the last category that we have is graphic novels. I only have one in this category, and that is Love Advice from the Great Duke of Hell. This is one that I had been meaning to read. It came out last year. This is part of my 2024-2025 new release vlog, and I liked it. It was quirky, weird. You have to have a very go with the flow sense of humor in this one because it's not serious. It does not take it so seriously at all. I don't know what I was thinking when I was getting into this, but we're following a main character who basically is like, yeah, I've been studying using these basically like occult like powers. He summons this demon, and the demon's like, oh yeah, like, who can I help you destroy? And the guy's like, oh no, I just want you to help me fall in love with someone. And he's like, what? Which is why I said, like, you really have to have a sense of humor to pick this one up, because it doesn't take itself seriously, like, at all. It genuinely does not take itself seriously, but I did end up enjoying this. I think that the next volume comes out soon. I gave it 4 stars. It's part of the Webtoon Unscroll books, and I'm definitely looking forward to getting to the rest of it. But that's it, y'all. I mean, like I said, I did read adult books, but I'm gonna review those for my patrons. The adult books that I did end up reading this month though were Silver Elite, For Whom the Bell Tolls, Great Big Beautiful Life, Cross My Heart, and This Summer Will Be Different. So I will be doing a wrap up for my patrons that will go up for them, but that's everything that I ended up reading in June. It was a great reading month. I am significantly like behind where I was last year, but you know, I'm enjoying what I'm reading, right? I'm loving getting to dive into the mood reading elements, and I probably will pick it up in the second half of the year. I always do. I think I always start off slow, and then by the time we jump into the second half of the year, I'm kind of like in mode of, okay, I need to get some stuff done. And part of that is because of work related things. Now I feel like I need to pick up the pace, not so much content and stuff here wise, like that's not typically the case. But yeah, let me know what you ended up reading in the month of June. What was your best book? What was your worst book? As always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications. If you are looking to support this channel, all those links will be down in the description box below. If you are looking to follow me on social media, all those links will be down in the description box as well. All the relevant vlogs, I will make sure that they are linked in the description box, so you can definitely check those out, and I will be back with another video soon. Bye.